This is it. This video I've been postponing to make for a year and a half, but let's take a crack at it. Hi, my name is Nerox, and today I'm breaking down sampling, more specifically low-end theory, which is more than just the name of a legendary Tribe Called Quest album. It is one of, if not the most important technique for sampling. This is Madlib, pioneer producer and loop digger.
All right, so you were making some motions while we were listening to that. Just what was going through your mind hearing this again, just in terms of like what you did with this?
I just wanted to leave it the same. Dudes get mad. I'm like, that dude just loop that shit up. That's my sound. Like, I'm a loop digger, so I just want to leave it like that. Just make it dirtier than what it was. People don't really understand. Some people don't really understand that.
Yeah, but I think you're being a little bit modest here too, because that's not just looping. I mean,
I chopped it, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm the loop digger, so.
Madlib explained that he is a loop digger, meaning that he just finds loops he really likes and doesn't mess with it too much. It is not as simple as it may sound, because you still have to listen to a lot of music from all different cultures to find these incredible and unique loops. Even though he called himself a loop digger, he also mentioned that he often does more to the sample than just loop it.
What's the process like? I mean, what's your, when you sit down, how does it start? What do you usually start with?
Well, it used to be I just try to replay the records that I liked. You know, I just listen to a record and then filter the bass line out and then just play over that and then keep adding things and adding things. Then I learn the right music, and then I do it different.
There, Madlib mentioned filtering out the bass line and adding his own stuff. And now we have arrived at low-end theory. So what is low-end theory? Simply, it is answering the difficult question: what do we do with the low end / bass of a sample? And in many cases, how can we add our own bass groove to a sample? Well, there's a bunch of different ways to approach low-end theory, and in this video, I'll be showing all the techniques I know of. I started producing inspired by Dilla, Ninth Wonder, Madlib, so naturally I wanted to sample. But back in the day, 6-7 years ago, there weren't as many resources as there are today, especially for sampling. We are currently in what I believe it to be the golden age of music production. In the last 3 years, production knowledge of pristine quality has become widely accessible. Back in the day, we didn't have any production live streams, and YouTube was saturated with producers that didn't have any real success in the industry and were most likely teaching as they learned.
I've been learning a lot lately.
Now we have live streams of the biggest producers in the world. It is insane to me that I get to watch Monty Booker's production process. I have been a fan for almost a decade now, and his music is super unique, so it would be incredibly hard to find a tutorial to teach you how to do Monty Booker's style if it's not coming straight from Monty Booker. And I could keep harping on how amazing it is to learn dance music straight from Disclosure, who often break down their hit tracks, who are on the top of the charts literally right now. And also giants like T-Pain and Timbo, who are listening and reviewing your music live on Twitch. And I also would like to mention Nick Mira, because if you use FL, watching Nick Mira is inspiring, honestly, because he's said to know every shortcut on FL Studio, and you can learn a lot by just watching him move. He can do in like a second what it would take you 15, 20, a minute to do, because his production process is just so good. Sorry about that tangent. But even with all those resources, I still feel like there is a lack of knowledge available about low-end theory and sampling in general. I feel especially qualified to break this down because if you've been a follower in this channel for any amount of time, you've noticed that I've done breakdowns for hundreds of sample tracks from a bunch of different producers. So please share, like, and subscribe, because a video like this would have saved me so much time back in the day. Plus, I worked really hard editing this. The first technique is remove and add bass. For this to work, it's better to just pick a sample that already has very little low end. An example of this is Dreamy by Dilla. If the sample already has its own low end, you can filter that out and try putting your own bass on it. An example of this is Alchemist's Far Left. In a more extreme example of this filtering technique, you have Get This Money by Dilla, where you can see how much of the sample is squashed by a filter, so Dilla could then add his own bass which dominates the track. In another extreme example, and honestly this could be a category on its own, you have what T- does with Melodyne, an amazing and versatile plugin that rewards every second you put into learning it. I will go more in depth about Melodyne in future videos, but what T- does here is that he uses it to remove the low end of the first half of the sample and replaces it with the low end of the second half of the sample.
I might just keep the melody. You duplicate that over. Yeah, okay, I like that. See, fucking I got rid of that other chord. Now I'm just gonna copy everything from the other loop, so all the music from this section can just come over. So I'll just copy this over.
The second technique is do nothing, but nothing is in quotation marks because you can still do a lot of crazy stuff with the sample's bass. In a simpler example, you have Knowledge's beat, Make It Live Forever, which straight up uses the bass from the sample on the beat. Now in a more complex example of using the sample's bass, you have Flamingos's Football Head. The sample has long-lasting notes that give a chill emotional vibe. Flamingos's then chops those notes and plays them in a syncopated rhythm to give it more groove. In the example, the two audio waves at the top are playing the mid and low frequencies, and the bottom two audio waves are playing the high and mid frequencies. But pay attention to the movement of the top two. Another way of using the sample's bass is what New Jape does on Sea of Clouds. Here he picks a sample with the bass groove he likes, then he isolates the low frequencies so he can then play the mid and high frequencies from other samples on top of the bass groove. SoundCloud was one of the hardest breakdowns for me to do, so here is a simpler example on J Dilla's Flowers.
Hide the sensibilities that you hear in these melodies. That's a gift to help us to make that emotion.
And the last technique is layering the bass. If you don't want to do some crazy filtering like I showed on Get This Money, you can add your own bass line regardless of the low end of the sample. Not really regardless, because you would still have to play a bass line that matches the key of the chords being played. I've done a video on this on the past. But the first example is Ninth Wonder Slowdown. The bass on the beat and the bass on the sample are quite similar. He doesn't remove the bass of the sample completely. Instead, he accentuates some notes of the original bass line to change its perceived groove. I think a better example to demonstrate the layering is You've Got Me by Young Bae. It is noticeable that the sample doesn't have a lot of sub or the very low end frequencies. And it is also noticeable that Young Bae has a lot of sub while maintaining the mid frequencies of the bass from the sample. I believe this is used when it isn't possible to filter out the bass line completely, usually because the bass line has too many mid frequencies. So instead, a sub is added to create a new groove. And finally, the last example is octave layering, which is something I see a lot in chill funk, chill trap, melodic trap. The technique is simply layering the same part of the sample but with different octaves. The example for this is Earl Sweatshirt's 2010. When breaking down this track, pitching the sample to the key of the song didn't work. Pitching the sample up would sound too thin and pitching it down would just sound weird. But when you layer the two, you have the exact sound from the song. And this is it. I know this content is golden for somebody that just started producing, but hopefully it can also be helpful for the more experienced producers. Other than that, please subscribe to keep me motivated and check out the Patreon I just launched. There you can have access to my videos early. I upload a bunch of videos that just stay private, and there you can find a link to those videos while they wait for their turn to be posted on YouTube. And in the more advanced tiers, you can have access to my personal music, the FLPs, the files of the breakdowns that I do, and all the breakdowns that I do for songs, because Again, this is mostly me just sharing my studies. But again, I gotta just say thanks to you guys for the support the last month. It's been insane. Thank you.